So after 4 days of deliberations, the ANC's 5th National General Council is finally over. So what were the key outcomes from those 4 days? Well, firstly, let's start with what is the National General Council. Well, the NGC, as it's called for short, is a midterm review of the parties since the last elective conference. Since the last elective conference was in 2022, there are a number of adopted resolutions and policies that the ANC planned to implement. So now we're in 2026 and we're at the midterm review, and the ANC is sort of looking back at some of those policies and whether it has implemented them. So one of the words that we've heard a lot in this NGC is the word renewal. Now, this is a word that we've heard dating back even as far back as 2010. The ANC just emphasizing renewal of the organization, but also renewal of its members. And this is very key to the ANC strategy in terms of the ANC feels that issues of corruption, factionalism, but also ideological differences within the organization require that the party sort of renews itself organizationally, but also from a membership point of view. And the only new thing that maybe was sort of adopted from this NGC is that the party has committed to drawing up a renewal chapter that should be adopted by 2032, but it also has performance targets that can be reachable for the ANC. Some of the things that the president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, spoke about is in terms of how the party has dealt with corruption. Now, you know that under the ANC government, there's been an establishment of IDAC, it's the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption, but also the Special Investigating Unit. Now, these units obviously have been established by an ANC-run government to look into corruption. And the interesting things about these entities that were established to investigate corruption, like IDAC and the SIU, is that they've investigated some senior ANC officials or senior ANC members, like the former Speaker, Nosiveno Mapisa-Nqakula, the former ANC spokespersons, Pulema and Zizigoto. So this is an example of the party, it says, is part of the renewal process. And to borrow a phrase from Jeff Radebe, the ANC veteran, he said that renewal is not a one-night stand, and it's something that has to continually happen for the party, and it's something that they plan on doing. Whether you believe it or not, it's something that the ANC's NGC has declared upon in this conference. With the local government elections coming up next year, a big part of the NGC deliberations was around the party's local election strategy. And this is something that President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke about in terms of that the last general elections, which were in 2024 last year, the ANC didn't do a proper door-to-door campaign. He said that the ANC has sort of lost touch with the people on the ground. And that is something that the ANC's local government election strategy has focused on, is going back to those door-to-door campaigns and making sure that they're actually intimate and genuine. He believes that the party, the ANC, can arrest this decline. But obviously the big problem for the ANC is that around the mid-2000s, the ANC has been losing support, whether that's nationally or locally. And there hasn't been an example where the ANC has lost support and sort of regained that support. And this is what the ANC is sort of trying to attempting to do with the local government elections, in terms of it has to regain that lost ground. In the last local government elections, the ANC only had about 45% of the vote, and all kinds of polling, all kinds of data shows that the ANC is going to face another electoral decline. So in that case too, the ANC has also been talking about coalitions, but also reviewing the government of national unity. The ANC president, Cyril Ramaphosa, spoke a lot around those parties within the GNU that are trying to sort of undo the transformation policies that have been introduced by ANC governments. So these are policies that include the National Health Insurance, BBEE, Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment, but also the Expropriation Act. Now, we do know that parties like the DA and the Freedom Front Plus that are in the GNU are sort of trying to fight those policies. And the ANC NGC has declared that the ANC must do everything in its power to ensure that those transformation policies remain as they are. So we're going to see, it's going to be interesting in terms of how much is the ANC willing to ensure that these policies do stay in place, and would that even extend to even breaking up the GNU in its current configuration? Another topic that the NGC also deliberated on is the ongoing impasse between the ANC and the South African Communist Party. The alliance partners have obviously there's been a lot of bad blood between the alliance partners since the SACP Congress decided that it's going to contest elections independently and no longer under the ANC banner. Now the ANC has sort of resolved itself to the fact that it can no longer persuade the SACP, but this is also because of the decision from the SACP to contest the elections was a decision taken in its Congress by branches. So if the SACP were to sort of go back to that decision, it would be very difficult, obviously, because it's a decision taken by the branches. One of the key things that the ANC NGC has declared is that members of the South African Communist Party can no longer sit in on the election strategy meetings. And this is very interesting because in June this year, we reported on the ANC's first Deputy Secretary General, Nomvula Mokonyane, kicking out SACP members from an election strategy meeting. Now, this made a bit of waves, and Nomvula Mokonyane defended herself and saying that since we are fishing for voters in the same ponds, we can't be sitting with people that are sort of our political rivals on the ballot paper. And now the NGC has made this an official platform or an official policy that SACP members can no longer sit in on election strategy meetings. However, there's still around a lot of questions around those members with dual memberships between the SACP and the ANC. This is also senior members like Gwede Mantashe, Buti Manamela, the ANC's Limpopo chairperson, Dr. Pope Ramatupa, but also these are just the senior persons, but there's also a lot of people maybe a bit on the ground from the ANC that have dual memberships. What happens to those people? If they identify with the ANC, do they then get to sit in on these election strategy meetings? So it will be interesting in terms of how this decision of kicking out SACP members from election strategy meetings is going to be implemented, considering the fact that a number of ANC people have dual memberships, and the ANC sort of didn't want to be in a position where it makes people choose. But what we do know is that Gwede Mantashe, who is a high-ranking member of both of the SACP and the ANC, said if he had to choose, he would definitely choose the ANC. And the last point on this is obviously something that we cannot run away from, is the succession talks. While the NGC is neither a elective conference where leaders are elected or a policy conference where the ANC's formal policy is adopted, what it has been used for in the past is sort of been used as a barometer for a lot of candidates with leadership aspirations to sort of gauge how much support they have on the ground, because the NGC consists of about 1,800 delegates from every province in the country, but also from a lot of branches across the country. Now, these are the same people that will also be voting in the upcoming ANC elective conference. So if you are someone that obviously has leadership aspirations in the ANC, this is a very good platform for you to actually make your case, but also to speak to those regional leaders, to speak to those provincial leaders and try and carry some support. Now, while in the public domain, ANC leaders have not publicly declared that they do have any succession ideas or aspirations, there has been some reporting that people like the current Speaker of Parliament, Togo Didiza, is rallying support for a presidential campaign. The Electricity Minister, Hoshiento Ramahupa, who's been credited with sort of decreasing or even eradicating the event of load shedding, he's also started an exploratory committee of whether he should be looking into a senior position within the ANC. But there's also obviously the ANC Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, who has taken over this NGC, and there was an interesting moment when after Fikile Mbalula spoke for about 3 hours delivering the ANC's midterm report, where after he spoke, after those 3 hours, all the delegates gave him a very long extended standing ovation and were singing his name. And there was a very critical moment in the ANC's NGC, and just in terms of the outward showing of how much support that ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has on the grounds and on those delegates. So the current term of the ANC's leadership, or the top 7, it ends in 2027. ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has no intention of going for a third term. the ANC national chairperson, Gwede Mantashe, he said he's too old, he's going to be retiring after 2027. So there's quite a number of those key positions that are going to be up in the air when 2027 comes. But for now, what the word is from the ANC is that they are just focusing on the local government elections and trying to regain that lost ground that they have lost since the mid-2000s. This is Thabiso Goba for Eyewitness News.